I turned 30 last week. You'd think that milestone birthdays come with deep reflection, maybe even a celebration. Mine came with an epiphany, and the final straw. I should have known better. My husband, Michael, and his family have always treated me like I was some kind of pet project, something to be tolerated but never truly respected. But I was so in love when we got married that I ignored the little digs, the patronizing smiles, the way Michael always seemed to agree with his family's judgmental comments with just a smirk and a sip of his whiskey. But my 30th birthday? That was the day the illusion shattered. Michael's family always hosts these elaborate dinners for birthdays. More for social clout than genuine love, but whatever. I showed up in my best dress, hoping foolishly that this year would be different. Maybe Michael would surprise me with something thoughtful. Maybe his family would, at the very least, acknowledge my efforts with my business, which I had built from scratch. Instead, Michael stood up in front of everyone, swirling his glass dramatically before making a toast. To Emma, who works so hard at her little project. I mean, she calls it a business, but let's be real, it's more of an expensive hobby, right? But hey, at least she has something to do while I take care of everything else. The room erupted into laughter. His mother smiled at me the way you might smile at a child who just said they want to be an astronaut when they grow up. His father nodded approvingly, like Michael had just said something profound. Even his sister Sophia, who had always been somewhat distant, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I sat there, gripping the edge of my chair, feeling the heat rise to my face. I wanted to scream, cry, throw the champagne in his smug face. Instead I smiled. I stood up, took my own glass and tapped the side with my fork. You know, Michael, you're right about one thing, I said sweetly. This business, my business, has kept me busy. So busy in fact that I've realized I don't actually need to be here anymore. So, consider this my last dinner as your wife. Silence. Michael blinked. What? I turned to his mother. Thank you for hosting. Your condescension was always so inspiring. To his father. Your advice on staying in my place really helped me understand exactly where I don't want to be. Then I faced Michael. And you? Enjoy your real job and your real family because I'm done playing the fool. I set my glass down gently and walked out. The moment I stepped outside into the night air, my heart pounded. But for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. Freedom. So, I actually did it. I left. I wish I could say it was dramatic, that I walked straight into my dream life, but reality doesn't work like that. Walking away from a toxic marriage sounds great in theory, until you realize you're walking toward the unknown. I spent the first night in a hotel, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I just made the biggest mistake of my life. Michael of course called. 23 times. By the next morning the text started. Are you serious? Over a joke. Come on, don't be dramatic. My parents didn't mean anything by it. Who's going to take care of you if you leave? That one made me laugh. Then the shift happened. You'll never make it alone. You think you're so smart? Good luck failing. You'll come crawling back. There it was. The real Michael. Instead of replying, I blocked his number and did what I should have done years ago. I focused on me. I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment, small but mine. No more walking on eggshells. No more backhanded compliments disguised as love. Just peace. I threw myself into my business like my life depended on it because in a way it did. I designed, created, marketed, shipped. Every late night, every mistake, every small victory felt earned. And I wasn't alone. Enter Olivia. Olivia had been my mentor since I first started this business. She was everything Michael wasn't: sharp, supportive, and fearless in a way that made me want to be fearless too. When I told her I left Michael, she just nodded and said, finally. Now let's make you rich. With her guidance, my brand started booming. Orders doubled, then tripled. Influencers started tagging my designs. Fashion magazines began reaching out. It was happening. But Olivia? She wanted more. You're thinking too small, Emma, she told me one night over wine. This could be huge. You should be showing in Paris, talking to investors, taking this global. Paris. Me. A girl who had spent years being told her business was a joke. Felt impossible. How? I asked. She slid a folder across the table. A loan. A big one. It's a risk, but I believe in you. And when we come back, You'll own this industry. The idea terrified me. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of not trying. So I signed the papers. And just like that, I was headed to Paris. What I didn't know. That moment, the one that should have been my big break, was about to become my biggest betrayal. You ever have that moment where you realize you've been played? Like really played? That was me. In Paris. But let's back up. I arrived in the city with stars in my eyes. The fashion capital of the world. The place where designers became legends. I should have been soaking in every second, but something felt off. First, I ignored it. I was too busy meeting investors, visiting high-end fabric suppliers, and planning my first European showcase. Olivia was by my side through it all, hyping me up, telling me this was our moment. Until I checked my business accounts. Numbers weren't adding up. Money was moving in weird ways, transfers I didn't authorize, payments I didn't recognize. First, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe international transactions taking longer? But the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Someone was bleeding my company dry. And that someone was Olivia. It started small, just a few thousand here and there. But then I found the contract. The one I had stupidly signed before coming to Paris. The one Olivia had slid across the table with that easy, confident smile. Buried in the fine print? A clause that gave her majority ownership if I defaulted on my loan. She had set me up. The financial discrepancies? Those weren't mistakes. They were calculated. She was siphoning money, making sure I'd hit default, and once I did, my entire business, everything I'd built, would be hers. I wanted to throw up. She walked into our meeting later that day like nothing was wrong. Ordered a cappuccino. Complimented my outfit. Talked about the future. And I sat there gripping my phone knowing I had proof. She didn't see it coming when I slid my own folder across the table. "What's this?" she asked, flipping through the pages. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Oh, just a collection of every unauthorized transaction tied to your account. Plus a fun little recording of you discussing how you'd maneuver me into losing control of the company." She went pale. I pulled out my phone and hit play. Her own voice filled the cafe. "Emma is brilliant, but she's too emotional to run a company. Once the Paris trip bleeds her out, she won't have a choice but to sign over everything. I'll handle it from there." She slammed the folder shut. "You have no idea what you're doing." I smiled. "No, Olivia. You had no idea who you were dealing with." Long story short, I called my lawyer. We moved fast, froze the accounts, gathered evidence, and blocked her from touching another dime of my business. By the time she realized she was truly screwed, I was already back in control. She tried to negotiate, but I wasn't playing her game anymore. Instead, I made her an offer. Walk away. No lawsuits, no public exposure, just disappear. Or, I take everything to court, ruin her reputation, and ensure she never works in this industry again. She chose to walk. And me? I was left standing in Paris, exhausted, furious, and more determined than ever. I had almost lost everything. But now? I was ready to build something unstoppable. And the last person I ever expected was about to help me do it. I was done trusting people. After Olivia's betrayal, I swore I'd never let anyone get that close again. I returned home from Paris bruised but not broken, determined to rebuild on my terms. No partners. No investors. Just me. Then Sophia called. Michael's sister. I almost didn't pick up. We'd never been close. She was the quiet one in the family, the one who stood in the background while Michael and his parents took center stage. So when her name lit up my phone, my first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. But something in my gut told me to answer. "Emma," she said, voice hesitant. "Can we meet? I have a business proposition for you." I nearly laughed. "Sophia, the last thing I need is another business partner." "I know," she said quickly. "I know you don't trust anyone right now. But just hear me out. Please." Against my better judgment, I agreed. And that's how I found myself sitting across from Sophia in a quiet cafe, wondering why the hell Michael's sister wanted to help me. Sophia wasn't like the rest of her family. She wasn't condescending. She wasn't arrogant. And as we talked, I realized something shocking. She resented them as much as I did. "I watched what they did to you," she admitted, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "How they dismissed you. How they dismissed me. She let out a bitter laugh. Do you know Michael still calls me his little sister like I'm some clueless kid? Like I don't have degrees in business and sustainability. I stared. You studied sustainability? She nodded. It's my passion. I've spent years trying to create ethical, sustainable fashion, but no one takes me seriously. Her voice hardened. Especially not our family. I leaned back, processing. And you want to invest in me? Not just invest, she said, leaning forward. Partner. On your terms. No shady contracts, no power plays. Just us, creating something that actually matters. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But the truth? I needed help. I needed capital to keep my business afloat after Olivia's financial damage. And more than that, I like Sophia's vision. Still, I wasn't going to be naive again. I want everything in writing, I said. A contract that gives me full creative control. And if I sense even a hint of manipulation. Sophia raised her hands. Agreed. 100% transparency. For the first time in forever, I felt like I wasn't walking into a trap. I was walking into something real. With Sophia's investment, we scaled. We rebranded, focusing on sustainable luxury. We partnered with local artisans instead of exploitative factories. We created a business that was ethical and profitable. And then, we launched in Paris. The real way this time. Our debut was everything Olivia had tried to steal from me. Except now, I was in full control. The press took notice. Industry insiders started talking. The demand for our brand skyrocketed. For the first time, I wasn't just proving Michael and his family wrong. I was proving myself right. But just when I thought we were unstoppable, someone big came knocking. And they wanted to change everything. Success is a funny thing. One minute you're clawing your way up, fighting for every inch. The next, the people who once ignored you are suddenly very interested. Enter Charlotte Devereaux. If you don't know the name, you don't know fashion. Charlotte was the industry powerhouse, the kind of woman who didn't ask for meetings, she summoned people. And when she summoned me, I knew I had to play it smart. So Sophia and I walked into her sleek Parisian office, every inch of me screaming, do not trust this woman. She greeted us with that razor-sharp smile, motioning to the seats in front of her desk. Emma. Sophia. I've been watching you both. Sophia tensed beside me. We're honored. Charlotte leaned forward, manicured fingers steepled. Let's cut to the chase. I want to buy exclusive rights to your brand. Full backing. Worldwide distribution. We make your label the name in sustainable fashion. I exhaled slowly. This was huge. A deal like this, it could take us from thriving to untouchable. But then came the catch. There will, of course, need to be adjustments, Charlotte continued smoothly. Scaling requires compromises. Sourcing more affordable materials. Streamlining production. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what that meant. Cheaper fabrics. Mass production. Cutting the very ethics we built our brand on. Sophia shot me a glance, her jaw clenched. That goes against everything we stand for. Charlotte waved a dismissive hand. Sustainability is just a trend, darling. You can market it without following it to the letter. I wanted to throw up. I'd spent years proving that ethical fashion could be profitable. And now? Now she wanted me to slap a greenwash label on mass-produced garbage and call it a day? No. Hell no. I stood, smoothing my dress. I appreciate the offer, Charlotte. But we're not interested. She blinked, her smile never faltering. Emma, be reasonable. A deal like this could make you legendary. I don't want to be a legend if it means selling out. Charlotte tilted her head, studying me. Then she laughed softly. You remind me of myself. Stubborn. Idealistic. But trust me, darling, idealism doesn't last. Sophia and I walked out of that meeting with our principles intact. But I should have known Charlotte wouldn't take no for an answer. And the next move? It wasn't business. It was war. I should have known Charlotte wouldn't just walk away. Women like her don't hear no. They erase obstacles. And when she realized I wasn't going to bend, she sent her brother to break me. Enter Benjamin Devereaux. A shark in a designer suit. Unlike Charlotte, he wasn't about seduction and persuasion. He was all brute force. It started small. Factories we partnered with suddenly had supply chain issues. Orders disappeared. Influencers who had begged to work with us ghosted overnight. Then the real hit. Benjamin launched a rival brand. And it looked exactly like ours. Our sustainable techniques? He copied them. Our brand aesthetic? He ripped it. But instead of paying artisans fairly, he mass-produced everything in underpaid factories. He sold our ethos as a lie. The fashion world ate it up. The media framed it as a battle between the visionary, him, and the idealist, me. Investors hesitated. Retailers pulled out. People whispered that we couldn't compete with Benjamin's speed and pricing. I was livid, but I refused to fight him his way. Sophia and I sat in my office, staring at the wreckage of our hard work. "We can't sue," she said. The designs were just different enough to avoid legal trouble. I clenched my fists. "Then we fight another way." And then it hit me. Benjamin stole our techniques. But he didn't have what made them real. So we did the one thing he couldn't. We went back to our people. We offered our artisans partnerships instead of contracts, ownership instead of wages. We built something that couldn't be copied. When the media found out, the narrative flipped overnight. We weren't just sustainable. We were revolutionizing the industry. Meanwhile, Benjamin's empire started cracking. Underpaid workers spoke out. Journalists dug into his supply chains. And then, the final twist I never saw coming. Michael. Yes, that Michael. My ex-husband. He came slithering back, suddenly concerned about my business. But instead of sabotaging me, he accidentally helped me. Because when he tried to warn me about Benjamin's plans, he let something slip, something that exposed illegal contracts Benjamin had been using. The media ran wild with it. And just like that, Benjamin was done. Charlotte tried to do damage control. But the industry wasn't stupid. They saw the truth. And me? I wasn't just surviving. I was winning. But this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about proving that ethical business could thrive. And for the first time, I knew I was unstoppable. I won. I stood on a stage in Milan, looking out at a packed audience of journalists, designers, and industry giants. People who once doubted me, dismissed me, called me idealistic. And now they were listening. I adjusted the mic, took a deep breath, and spoke the words I never thought I'd get to say. Sustainable fashion isn't a trend. It isn't a gimmick. It's the future, and it's profitable when done right. The crowd erupted in applause. This wasn't just my moment. It was a turning point for the entire industry. Benjamin, finished. His brand collapsed under the weight of legal battles, worker lawsuits, and financial ruin. Turns out, exploiting people isn't great for business when the world is watching. Charlotte? Oh, she tried to pivot, tried to rebrand herself as a champion of sustainability. But the industry had moved past her. No one was buying the act anymore. And Michael? Well, that was interesting. Michael showed up at one of my events, not as an investor, not as a critic, but as something else. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I started a thing." "A thing?" I crossed my arms. "A garden," he admitted. "Sustainable organic produce. Thought it was time to build something real." I almost laughed at the irony. The man who once mocked my dreams was now growing his own. But I wasn't bitter. Because I had grown too. "You should be proud of that," I said simply. And just like that, our chapter truly closed. Sophia and I expanded globally, opening a flagship store in Paris, one built on real sustainability, real values, and real impact. We partnered with artisans worldwide, proving that ethical business wasn't just possible. It was thriving. And me? I wasn't just successful. I was free. Because success isn't about revenge. It's about proving the world wrong by doing what they said was impossible. And I